Hello, Stats fans, and welcome to another issue of Go Figure, the series that stares numbers in the face until they crack, confess, and beg for mercy. I am Andy Zaltzman in London, where cricket is in the air. Or maybe it's cheap sausages. So hard to tell the difference sometimes. They both contain wood, grass cuttings, and linseed oil. Yum. And joining me by the technological witchcraft that is the internet from Bangalore, it's the numerical Nebuchadnezzar himself, Cricinfo's S. Rajesh.
Hi Andy, how are you doing?
Very well, thanks. How are you?
I'm very good.
So we've got a terrific number this week that eagle-eyed viewers might have already worked out based on the high-tech whiteboard behind me. I think we are the only show that still uses a whiteboard as a form of communication. It's 222. So Rajesh, what particularly made you plump for this number this week?
Well, there are two things to go with 222, as it should be. The first is IPL related. It was KKR's score in their very first match of the IPL. That was when McCullum scored 158. That was what KKR scored 222. So we have to have an IPL connection with any number now, don't we?
That is the rule of cricket. That is the absolute rule of cricket.
So that's one reason. The other reason is also that England have this really crucial series against New Zealand happening now. Their most crucial assignment of the summer.
Yeah.
And 222 happens to be Nathan Astle's score against them in 2002. Which is the highest score by a New Zealand batsman against England. So why not marry the two? The most important series for England and the most important series in India.
So, it was one of the most extraordinary innings ever played in the history of humanity's greatest creation, cricket, with all due respect to the wheel, sliced bread, and the internet. It was an innings at the end of which, by coincidence, the pulse rate of the then England captain, Nasser Hussain, had risen to 222 beats per minute. Astle went from 97 off 113 until he was eventually out for 222 off 168. So off his last 57 balls, he scored 127 runs at a strike rate of 222 per 100 balls.
Not a misfit in the IPL either. It could have easily been an innings from the IPL. In fact, that innings contained 11 sixes. It's the second most number of sixes in any test innings. The highest one was 12. We just missed it by one. And that was Wasim Akram when he scored that unbeaten 257. He was the most likely batsman to score an unbeaten 257 as well. So, and since we are talking about IPL and sixes, we need to mention here also that Chris Gale's highest in a test innings is only 9 sixes. And that was when he actually scored 111 more runs than Astle did. In his 333 against Sri Lanka, Chris Gale hit only 9 sixes, and that's his highest in a test innings.
That is a frankly pathetic number of sixes to hit in an innings from anyone. This coming Lord's Test will be the 221st Lord's Test, meaning the next one in the Ashes is going to be Test number 222 at the home of cricket. There are 3 times that a team has lost by 222 runs in a Test. They were all in the 3rd Tests of series, coincidentally. On one of these occasions, Sri Lanka failed to post a single 50 in the match when losing by 222 to Pakistan in Karachi in March 2000. And it's the only time in Test history that a team scored over 200 in both innings without anyone scoring a 50, and their match total of 455, the second highest total of runs by a 50 in a team in a Test, behind the 467 England posted losing to South Africa at Newlands in 2004-5. South Africa score in the second innings of that game 222 for 8. And in that South African team, Jacques Rudolph, whose highest score in tests, 222 not out.
In fact, yes, you mentioned Jacques Rudolph. That's also the second highest score on debut by any batsman. The highest is Tip Foster's 287. That was way back in 1903. And the second highest score on debut is Rudolph's 222. In fact, Astle's 222 also came in the 4th innings of a test match. It's the second highest score in the 4th innings of a test as well. The highest, and he missed the highest by just a run. It was George Headley against England once again. And then you have Sunil Gavaskar, who scored 221 at the Oval in 1979. So you have scores of 223, 222 and 221 in the 4th innings. All of them against, can you guess which team?
Against England. Oh, the pain. Now, the 222nd Test match, that was caused the eruption of the bodyline crisis that almost sparked a devastating nuclear war between those two great hemispheres, the North and the South. Adelaide, 1932-33, the 222nd Test. Australia in their first innings of that match, all out for 222. In that innings, Bill Woodfull was hit on the heart, Bert Oldfield clonked on his noggin, and 222 was also Oldfield's response when asked by the team doctor, one-fingered Lionel, how many fingers am I holding up? 2. Take another guess. 2. Still wrong. 2. You're going to hospital.
Well, and do you know that the first 222 in Test was scored by Gundappa Vishwanath? That was in 1982. It was a drawn match. Nothing much happened. In fact, the next 222 was scored by Astle, which was 20 years later. But then in the next 19 months, there were 3 scores of 222s in Tests. One by Dravid, one by Rudolph, and of course Astle. There were only 18 scores of more than 200 during this period in Tests, and 3 of them were exactly 222. So, what odds of that happening, Andy?
Well, pretty small odds, I'd imagine, Rajesh. 2, that's some excellent facts. 222, testing, 222. Now, many cricket fans will think of Richie Benaud with all these 2s around, and Benaud scored 2 of his 3 Test centuries in the 57-58 series in South Africa. His scores were 122 and 100. Add those up, you don't need me to tell you, that's 222. 2.22, also the economy rate of Garfield Sobers in Test cricket, and the number of ODI innings Sachin Tendulkar played in the second millennium, if you assume that it ended in 1999, which, judging by the size of the party in London at the end of 1999, it did. 222 innings. In that time, he'd hit 111 sixes and been not out 22 times. So some nice numerical symmetry from the little master there. Here's another one for T20 fans. 222 is the highest score ever by a team batting first in a T20 match that has gone on to lose the game. That was the Titans against the Cape Cobras 2 years ago. The Titans scored 222 for 4. And lost, and their captain that day, that man Jack Rudolph again, with his Test best score of 222 burning ironically in his mind. Here's another 222-run victory margin, Rajesh. India's second biggest win in Australia. It was at the MCG in 77-78. That made the series 2-all after Australia. That made the series 2-1 after Australia had gone 2-0 up in the first 2 tests. And that game at the MCG began with India slipping to 0 for 2, which was the first time a team had ever won a test match after losing its first 2 wickets for 0 in the first innings of the game. The next time that happened, coincidence alert, was in Astle's 222 match when England, who went on to win the game, were 0 for 2 in the first over. Oh, mama, write that one down.
Since you brought up Tendulkar, here's another one on 222 and Sachin. 222 was also the partnership between Tendulkar and Azharuddin in that Cape Town Test match of 1997. When they came into bat at 58 for 5 and left at 280 for 6. Azhar scored 115 of 110 balls. That's one of the all-time outstanding partnerships that probably India have had overseas. And it was even more stunning because of India's scores in the previous match and in the second innings of the same test. In the first test in Durban, they'd been bowled out for 166. That's not 166, that's 166 in their 2 innings. In the second test, South Africa scored 529, India were 58 for 5, and then in the second innings, they got bowled out for 144. So if you take the 3 innings apart from this double century partnership, they scored 310 runs for 30 wickets. And then on the other hand, you had a 222-run partnership between Sachin and Azhar. So that's how inconsistent India were then.
And in the second innings of that match, South Africa's Brian McMillan bowled the 222nd maiden of his Test career. Would you believe it? Yes. Would you care about it? I sincerely hope not. Now, here's an interesting one. Teams scoring 222 in ODIs have won 15 and lost 28. That's ignoring the ties and the no results. That's only a 35% win percentage, which is the lowest win percentage of any team score over 205. And in fact, you're better off scoring 201 to 204. That gives you a 48% win percentage than those extra 20-odd runs make you almost 30% less likely to win. So 222 is a lethal score for a team to get.
I think ahead of the Champions Trophy, that's a very, very key stat. I think you should probably distribute it to all the coaches.
Now, do you know offhand, Rajesh, who the 222nd cricketer to represent Australia in a test match was?
I have absolutely no clue.
You'd never have guessed. By which I mean you'd never have guessed. Colin Guest, who played his one and only test in 1963. There we go, a little pun for you pun fans out there. 222 is also the number of runs conceded by John Emgary in the 4 tests he played in the 1987 series against Pakistan in 107 overs. That was tidy enough, but unfortunately Emgary took the grand total of 0 wickets in those 4 tests. That's the most overs bowled in the series without taking a wicket. And in his previous innings, in the last innings of the previous Ashes series, he'd taken 7 for 78. Funny old game. Thereafter in his test career, averaged 63. And it was the 3rd time in 4 Pakistan tours of England that an England bowler had conceded 222 runs in the series, after Willis in 82 and Tony Greig in 1974. And it's still the most conceded by an England bowler in a series without taking a wicket. 7th of all time, leading the way Harbhajan Singh's 0 for 355 series figures against Pakistan in 2005-06. Emgary was recently bumped down from 6th to 7th on that table by Imran Tahir, who took 0 for 260 in the series against Australia late last year in his only one and only match in it, in which he bowled 37 overs, times that by 6, 222 balls.
And I'm still not done with Sachin. He was involved in another 222 run stand with Dravid against Bangladesh, which makes him the only player, the only batsman in the history of Test cricket to be involved in two stands of 222s in Tests. And staying with partnerships of 222s, there was one by Vijay Manjrekar and Vijay Hazare in the 1952 Headingley Test against England, in which they came into bat at 42 for 3, and India were actually bowled out for 293 after a partnership of 222 for 1 wicket. The second innings of that Test match was especially interesting because India were 4 down for no runs. That was the first time it's ever happened. It hasn't happened since. And India went on to lose that match. And one of the victims was Vijay Manjrekar, who was also involved in the 222 run stand in the first innings. He was the 4th victim out for a duck. 222, also the score of both the teams in what was the first tied ODI. You briefly mentioned 222s and the win-loss for ODIs. 222 was also the score when Australia played West Indies in that Benson and Hedges final in 1984. It was the second final. Both teams scored 222. And in fact, that became pretty controversial because West Indies had already won the first match and they had a better record in the group stages. So they thought that with a tie in the second match, the third final would not be played. But they were forced to play that. And according to Wisden, they say that the Australian Cricket Board, in their own confusion, allocated an additional £18,000 in prize money to ensure that West Indies played that third match.
That's some excellent facts there. Now here's one for you. 222 is the number of 4s hit by the immortal Russell Arnold of Sri Lanka in his Test career. In his 44 Test career. That makes him the greatest batsman in cricket history to have hit exactly 222 4s in Tests. And he's also, by great coincidence, one of only 2 bowlers to have bowled exactly 222 overs in his entire Test career for his 11 wickets, along with Goofy Lawrence of South Africa, who bowled 222 overs in his only series, taking 28 wickets and 18, never picked again, which might be considered a bit unlucky. Also, the number of Test wickets taken by Waqar Younis in victories at an average of 18.2 in 39 wins. In the first 14 of those wins, he took 116 wickets at 14 with 13 5-wicket hauls. In the last 25 wins, only 1 5-wicket haul. Also, the number of catches taken by Viv Richards for the West Indies in Tests and ODIs combined. Also, the number of runs scored by Alistair Cook in the last home series against Australia in the 2009 Ashes at an average of 24.66, exactly 100 years after Australia's Sid Gregory scored exactly the same number of runs at exactly the same average. You could not engineer a stat like that. unless you were Farouk Engineer, who's the only other man to have scored 222 runs at 24.66 in a series, which he did for India against West Indies in 74-75. Engineer clearly had a bit of a thing for this magnificent combination of numbers. He scored 222 runs at 24.66 in his 5 tests at the Ferrol-Shah Kotla in Delhi over the course of his career. It's also the number of runs that Brendan McCullum has scored in his first 2 tests at Lords before the one that's starting this week, in which he became the only man ever to be out twice in a Lords test within a single 4 of a century. I think I'm nearly done, Rajesh. Have you got anything else?
222, also the number of balls bowled by Abdul Qadir in that 1987 Lahore test, which we briefly talked about last time because England had been bowled out for 175, which was our number last week. 222 was the number of balls he bowled to take 9 for 56, which is the most wickets taken by any bowler in a spell of 222 deliveries.
No, 222. No, I think we both need to go and have a bit of a lie down and talk to some real people instead of some numbers. So until next time, that stands from me here in London. 222, goodbye.
222, goodbye from here too.